I got a very interesting email for today's Ask a Nurse, and today's question comes from Chris. And Chris asks, what is dialectical behavior therapy? As always, Chris, this is for advice only. Should you need counseling, please consult your therapist. But let's answer this question. Do you have a question or a concern? Would you like the guidance of a retired registered nurse? If so, contact me at the email you see on your screen. You can remain anonymous, just state so in your correspondence. So, good morning to all the beautiful souls out there in YouTube land. Today's question is a very interesting question, and it comes from a very good friend of mine, Chris. And he asked, Annie, what is dialectical behavior therapy? My therapist is trying to use it on me, I don't understand it, and it seems like it's difficult. Well, Chris, I'm going to make it very, 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 very simple for you. Again, talk these points over with your therapist, okay? But in a nutshell, Chris, in a 10-minute presentation, a dialectical behavior therapy is the main treatment for borderline personality disorder, okay? And since borderline personality disorder impacts your emotions and your relationship, your therapist is using dialectical behavior therapy to teach you skills to manage your emotions and your relationships. Now that's basically what your therapist is trying to do in a nutshell. Now, there's 4 modalities to dialectical behavior therapy, and that is mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotional regulation. So, as you can tell, Chris, these are very in-depth modalities, right? So this is why you mentioned when I was talking to you on the phone that it takes a long time. Well, Chris, it sure does. It takes 6 to 9 months, and it's used in combination with group sessions and individual sessions. And basically, Chris, what your therapist is trying to do is teach you coping skills in all 4 of these areas. So let's talk about these areas a little bit, and let me explain them to you. So you see, Chris, we've already established that this type of therapy is to help you with your emotions and your relationships in life, right? And we've already established that your therapist will use a combination of group therapy along with individual therapy. When does he or she use group therapy or individual therapy? Well, it depends on what the therapist is trying to help you with at the time. So let's take mindfulness, for example. What is mindfulness, Chris? Mindfulness is becoming aware of your emotions, becoming aware of your interactions with your relationships, right? So your therapist might use individual therapy for this, right? And of course, Chris, this is going to take, 6 months, 9 months, a lifetime. You might not figure it out till you get to heaven, for Christ's sakes. But that's what mindfulness is. Becoming aware of your emotions and how you interact with people in your relationships. The second modality I mentioned is interpersonal effectiveness. That's a mouthful. Now, what is that? Well, that is to convey needs and being able to maintain integrity throughout the interaction. So that's just being able to tell somebody what you need without blowing up or getting upset or withdrawing, right? You have to be able to maintain integrity throughout your interaction. Uh, you gave me permission to use your name, so I'm going to use an example. You told me when you go to church, for example, at the Salvation Army, you sit in the back because there's so many people, right? Well, that's okay for now. But as your therapist works with you, you're going to be able to interact with the people more. You might be able to sit in the middle of the pews. And then after a while, you'll be able to sit up front, right? So interpersonal effectiveness is your being able to convey needs and maintaining the integrity throughout the interaction of those needs, right? Your minister is there to meet a need for you, right? So that's just an example. I just used the Salvation Army as an example. Now, how the therapist might be able to help you is, individual therapy. I can see her talking about that to you. And also group therapy. I can see some role playing here. I can definitely see role playing here. Again, Chris, ask your therapist about this. These are very, very good talking points. Our third modality is distress intolerance. That is a person's ability to manage actual or perceived emotional distress and the ability to make it through the incident without making it worse. So your therapist will definitely do individual therapy with this. She will help you with your triggers, right? This is a person's ability to manage actual or perceived emotional distress. So what triggers you, Chris? Talk to your therapist about what triggers you and what you can do to help you make it through those times when you feel triggered. For example, I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Every time I hear a siren, or let's just use one example, the siren, I get tense, I get tight. Why do I get tense or I get tight? Because that to me, a siren is danger, right? So I tense up and I'm like, oh my God, somebody's hurt, I'm hurt, whatever, right? So what my therapist has me do is say, okay, calm down, you're in a safe place. First, she has me reassure myself that I'm in a safe place, that there is no danger. And then secondly, she wants me to take 5 slow, deep breaths, right? That my therapist has helped me through that trigger. First of all, I have to realize too that there is no real perceived distress. It's my thought process. That's why I'm saying, Annie, calm down, you're in a safe place. So talk to your therapist about this. What is triggering you? Talk to your therapist about your triggers. Let's go back to the Salvation Army and sitting in the back, for example. Why do you sit in the back? Is it just because you're shy? If that's the reason, that's okay. But are you sitting in the back because you don't like the feeling you get? Are you sitting in the back because there is a bright light in the front? I don't know. Again, Chris, it's a silly example, but you know what I'm talking about. Talk to your therapist. This is really great, Chris. I'm glad you asked me this question. And the last modality is emotional regulation. What is emotional regulation? It is the ability to react to or maintain emotions in a manner that is socially acceptable. Okay? Now I'm going to share with you a very, very personal story that those of you who are OGs of this channel know. My neighbor, Tom, is 85 years old. He's got dementia now. Okay, I'm a retired nurse. I know he's got dementia. So, because he's upstairs, he's not able to care for himself, he's not able to eat, etc., and so forth, without me prompting him. He's got no family. All of his friends have passed away. He's 85 years old. So, what I had to do, because I am not able to care for him, and I have no family ties to him, I called Adult Protective Services to come in on his behalf. Now, this was where I had wrong emotions, right? Adult Protective Services showed up, talked to him, then they wanted to talk to me. Well, I was very short, very curt with Adult Protective Services. I even found myself raising my voice at Adult Protective Services, and I said, if you don't intervene on his behalf, then I'm moving. As a matter of fact, I even started yelling at Adult Protective Services. Why? They were here for Tom. They were not here for me. I was not showing the appropriate emotion. When we talk about emotional regulation, my reaction to Adult Protective Services was not socially acceptable. Why did I do that? Because I was a foster child, Chris, right? Because as a child Protective Services is a real trigger for me. Child Protective Services did not do their job with me, right? I was in 5 homes by the time I was 5, and in my 5th home, 15 years later, my foster parents get arrested for child abuse and child molesting. 15 years, right? So any protective services is a huge trigger for me. So when Adult Protective Services came for Tom, I thought in my head, Child Protective Services for little Annie. And what did little Annie do? Little Annie threw a temper tantrum and started crying. Okay? But little Annie is now an adult. Little Annie is 57 years old. This was not Child Protective Services. This was Adult Protective Services. All right? They were not even here for me. They were here for Tom. So my emotion in that moment was wrong. I did not regulate my emotions that were socially acceptable. And this is what the therapist will do for you, Chris. Tell her your triggers. Tell her when you get upset or when you close up, right? Tell her I have a feeling you don't talk. See, when I get upset, I start yelling and barking and getting all irrational. I have a feeling when you get upset, you close off. So talk to your therapist about the times you get closed off and what can you do about those unacceptable reactions, right? Those socially unacceptable behaviors when it comes to emotional regulation. So there you go, Chris. This is Dialectical Behavior Therapy in a 15-minute presentation. Okay? Again, this is a big thing, to unpack with your therapist. But what I want you to take away is that it does take a long time, Chris. It takes 6 to 9 months just to learn the coping skills, and then it takes a lifetime to live it. And like I said, you may not know all the answers until you get to heaven, Chris. But it basically deals with 4 modalities, and that is mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotional regulation through the teaching of coping skills, either by group therapy or individual therapy, Chris. I hope this helps. And if you have any more questions, please email me and I'll make another video. Good luck, Chris, and God bless.